Luke was mentioning intelligence agencies and social media. And so we have this story that's been going around from the Gray Zone. This is written by Kit Klarenberg and Max Blumenthal. Now, you can absolutely argue these individuals have their bias. I believe that they have a leftist bias. But this is an interesting story. Leaked files expose Syria PsyOps veteran astroturfing bread tube star to counter COVID restriction critics. That is a mouthful of a headline. Now, I don't know if this is true. I'm not familiar with the Gray Zone. Take it all with a grain of salt. But they write, by covertly recruiting popular YouTube influencer Abigail Thorne to counter growing opposition to UK government COVID restrictions, PsyOps pros are bringing home the tactics they honed in the Syrian dirty war. Leaked documents have revealed a state-sponsored influence operation designed to undermine critics of the British government's coronavirus policies by astroturfing a prominent founder of the BreadTube clique of anti-fascist YouTube influencers. The project aims to conduct psychological profiling on British citizens dissenting against policies such as mandatory vaccination and lockdowns, then leverage the data to establish a YouTube channel that portrays these critics as dangerous super spreaders of disinformation. Interesting. I was accused of spreading election disinformation and conspiracies because one time I retweeted somebody on Twitter and they happened to have been wrong. I don't know about the veracity of these claims, but this is us looking through, assuming it's all true, a keyhole into what is probably very, very prominent. Yeah, government agencies, intelligence operations, PsyOps, it's all real. They're all working on this stuff.
I was just going to say that. PsyOps are real. The CIA has knowingly infiltrated Hollywood, the corporate media, politics, of course, admittedly. So why wouldn't you think they would not be infiltrating the online space? Of course they're doing this. And there's this famous journalist, Udo Ufketi. He's a German journalist who literally came out and whistleblowed. He was one of the most prominent, most important journalists in all of Germany. And he said, the CIA came to me. They wrote articles in my name, and they told me just to hit publish, and I did many times. So the CIA
was this guy's name?
Udo, E-U-D-O.
E-U-D-O?
Udo, that's his first name. Ulfketi, U-L-F-K-O-T-T-E. Came out and said, hey, I was told by intelligence agencies to regurgitate these talking points, and I did. And
so we got it. We got his Wikipedia page pulled up.
So if they're doing this with corporate media, you think they're not doing this with social media? Obviously they are, because that's how they influence a lot of their policies that they want to institute.
Luke, Wikipedia says he was a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah.
So that means everything he's ever claimed is clearly false.
Of course, Wikipedia is always true no matter what.
He maintained, this according to Wikipedia has this, he maintained that journalists, including himself and leading newspapers, published material that had been fed to them or bought by the CIA and other Western intelligence and propaganda agencies. He was an assistant editor at the German newspaper Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, pronouncing that wrong, for several years until 2003. Between 1997 and his death, he authored a dozen books, including a number with populist themes. Perhaps. I'll tell you this. I don't know this guy. I don't need to trust this guy. If you think intelligence agencies aren't seeding stories, you're the conspiracy theorist. I'm sorry. You'd have to be a conspiracy theorist to believe none of that is going on. Russia does it. China does it. Even small countries do it. Small countries that we don't think would be an issue for us. They all engage in these kind of psychological operations and manipulations. And we get reports on it. Here's the funny thing. We get stories where it's like, the CIA said Iran is engaging in manipulation campaigns. Yes. Why wouldn't the CIA be doing the exact same thing? Why wouldn't any other intelligence agency be doing the exact same thing?
In the 1970s, there was congressional hearings with members of the CIA admitting that they have agents within all the major top news organizations. A lot of people attribute this incorrectly to Operation Mockingbird, but that's a separate thing. That's a separate issue. There was congressional hearings. You could watch the videos of CIA officials saying that they have infiltrated the top echelons of the corporate media, and they are using, of course, that power of the corporate media in order to spread their stories, or AKA disinformation.
But that's also how like a bunch of agencies operate anyway, i.e. leaks from agencies.
Not just leaks.
And to specific media outlets, the relationships between, bureaucrats and agencies. I mean, that's always a problem, particularly for Republican administrators, Republican administrations, because the bureaucracy is so overwhelmingly Democrat. But theoretically, if somebody like Bernie Sanders, for example, were to get in as president, you would have the same problems because the bureaucracy is sort of like technocratic neoliberal left. overwhelmingly. But I don't think that that's unique to the CIA.
But we're not talking about leaks. We're not talking about leaks. We're talking about CIA agents implanted in the corporate media.
I'm saying that the stories that you read are also seeded by people in agencies, often in service of like interagency, dispute, right? What they allow out about the administration then, helps them take down somebody in a sister organization, a sister agency that they don't like. I mean, there's a huge problem in this incestuous relationship between media and bureaucracy.
Let me tell you how much worse it is. You think it was bad back then that intelligence agencies could get someone from their, division to work at a news organization, infiltrate? Ooh. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok are going to make it so incredibly easy for intelligence agencies to control the narrative and control the world. You have no idea. I'll make it very, very simple for you. All they need to do is have access to YouTube, and they simply say, we want this channel to be on the front page. Done. So when you have 1 million channels, and you have one guy who's, Alex Jones, talking about all of these crazy things, some of which strangely turned out to be true. They simply say, get rid of him, and then he's gone. And then you get other channels. They're like, this does advance, or at the very least doesn't interfere with. If you are advancing what they want and pushing the narrative they want, all of a sudden your videos are appearing on the front page of YouTube. You don't work for anybody. You have no handler. You don't know why. See, back in the day when media organizations were few and far between relative to today, they needed to figure out how to seed stories. So it could be leaks, it could be overt, it could be liminal, it could be superliminal, or it could be subliminal. Nowadays, they have 1 million channels to choose from, and all they have to do is be like, buy ads on this channel. This person will make a bunch of money, they'll produce more content, and then we'll tell YouTube to put them on the front page. Then the narrative from the intelligence agencies dominates. It's that simple.
Absolutely. And I would argue that's potentially happening right now.
Well, they're putting CNN on the front page.
Absolutely.
I don't think it's limited to intelligence agencies, is my point.
Oh,
I
for
think
sure.
that it's an operation of how to do business.
Zuckerberg.
I mean, that's the problem, right? That's why we've moved so far in terms of there's a ton of pressure, and these companies have a uniculture, right? A monoculture. For the most part, they agree on who the bad guys and the good guys are within the companies and between the companies. And what you end up having is a type of sort of cultural collusion that doesn't even need to be like sort of communicated, right? It doesn't need to be told. Most of these companies don't even need to be told by some like shadowy official in an administration what to do. They know who the good guys and bad guys are. They know which side of the narrative they're on, and they can implement that without having to be told. I mean, I know we've moved on a little bit from the vaccine mandates, but I think that's what the federal mandate was. I think it was a bat signal. It's probably going to get struck down, but it was a bat signal to corporate America. And most of that enforcement has already happened. Right? So like it is a way of getting completely around the actual democratic process of passing laws and enforcing them.
This is why social media censorship is such a big deal. Because it's very obvious that what they've been doing over the past decade with the banning and removal of certain commentators, and I guess I got to be a little optimistic on Rumble and their growth, but I'm still worried that's a short-term solution.
The idea of getting rid of debates, concepts, and thinking is absolutely absurd. To say that this line of thinking or this line of questioning is not allowed is godlike authority that is obviously going to be abused, whether it's in the hands of Susan Wojcicki or the CIA. It doesn't matter. That's way too much power with infrastructure and information highways that were funded by tax dollars, with also intelligence agencies' connections. When you look at a lot of the startups, a lot of these organizations, these big tech organizations, they had connections to intelligence agencies. I don't think that was coincidental. I think a lot of these intelligence agencies saw this coming, and that's why they embedded within them. They're working hand in hand with them. And I think they're using this to promote this, as you mentioned, Tim, in many covert ways where we don't even realize that they're doing it. And it might not even be that as obvious as it used to be, where they had an agent within CBS News. They don't have to do that anymore. They just have to control the algorithm, which I think they have a lot of sway in.
At the very least, you can take a look at how YouTube operates. And we often have some of our segments. It's very obvious. Some just are shadow banned, some aren't. For a while, they had all these channels in an isolation bubble where they stopped recommending them to any outside channel. So it's like if you were it was a clever way to destroy anti-establishment opinions. If you were in this group of people, they segmented you away from all of the mainstream YouTube content, so you were no longer recommended. But if you were already subscribed to these channels, you'd be recommended only those channels. Then over time, they shrink out those channels, shut some down, give them strikes, and then they're gone. And then it pushes to the mainstream narrative. Now you go on, look, this is all you got to do to understand this. Get a brand new computer or open a private tab and go to youtube.com and look at what they promote to people. Now, to be honest, it's family-friendly stuff. They're trying to make an entertainment channel. I get it. But you are not, you will see leftist political commentary. You will see Jimmy Kimmel making political commentary about Trump or whatever, even though Trump's not the president. But you're not going to get the inverse. CNN, CBS, all of these news outlets will be put on the front page. And then what do? Well, people were disliking them. And it was strange. How is this on the front page if nobody likes it? So then what did YouTube do? They got rid of the dislike button. That's how you do it. That's how you control the narrative.
Yeah. You also go on the trending page. That also tells you a lot of what ideas and videos are being promoted to you compared to, of course, the actual videos that are getting the views. They don't show you that anymore. They used to. That's how they got everyone hooked in. Look at the front page of Reddit. Also another huge change that was happening very subtly, not overtly, but I think slowly and surely. It just became an absolute crap show, and they did it by slowly boiling the water on Reddit and making it more and more progressive, making it more and more just absolutely insane as time went on, just like with eBay and the color yellow, which Tim explains a lot, where people didn't like the color yellow, but they slowly changed it. And
they didn't like white. The website was yellow. They changed it overnight to white, and everyone complained, like, oh, it hurts, I don't want to see it. So they changed it back, and then every day they slowly made it white until a year later it was white. Nobody cared.
And I think that's also happening with our kind of consciousness and the information that we're getting from a lot of these big tech platforms that are only getting crazier and crazier and crazier by the day. And I think that's exemplified with people getting crazy and also us dealing with a mental health crisis that we never, ever had before when it came to the onset of social media.
Yeah, the great Jordan Peterson broke that down in an interview at some point in time where he was just like, if I shove you, you're going to fight back. But what I have to do is just kind of take an inch towards you and then another inch. And then before you know it, I've pushed you wherever I've wanted you to go to begin with without having to take the measure of shoving you.
Yep.
I think the most important thing when you're thinking about, how tech companies and how social media manipulate what's seen and what isn't is that we need to build new networks from scratch. And whatever reliance anyone has on any of these networks, it's any of these companies, you have to operate on the assumption that eventually you'll get banned. And you have to build in advance and think about it in advance and build these networks anew. And look, there are major consequences to having a red and blue everything, right? Ideally, we would not have like a red and blue coffee shop, a red and blue, server provider, like red and blue internet, right? But I don't see any alternative because there isn't going to be, and the line is moving extremely fast in terms of like initially, of course, some of the most disturbing things that I saw are when it jumps away from social media and into real life. Because some people, just with some legitimacy, say like, okay, well, you don't have a right to a Twitter account. You don't have a right to a YouTube account. That's true. But when every network bans you, right? Every company bans you. There's a certain, inability to get your message out. But even moving beyond that, they have jumped it into IRL, right? So where you can't get a bank account. Right. Maybe you can't use private transit like Uber and Lyft, right? There's obviously a problem. And actually, I mean, this I get a lot of flack for making this comparison, but not on the substance of it, but on the like shape of the problem. It starts to look very much like what the 1964 Civil Rights Act was put in place to solve, right? Because the problem wasn't that one restaurant was not serving Black Americans. The problem is that every restaurant in an entire geographic area and every hotel and every service was not willing to serve a class of customer because they had a predetermined cultural agreement that wasn't quote unquote traditional antitrust, right? Because they're not talking to each other saying we're freezing people out. There was a monoculture, a cultural agreement not to serve certain customers. The shape of what's happening now, I think, is quite similar.
Yeah. Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to watch live, you can check out this channel Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and if you want more unfiltered and uncensored content with all of these guests, go to timcast.com and become a member. all of these guests you know and love in exclusive segments on our website where we are unrestricted in what we talk about. So you'll definitely not want to miss it. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all next time.